Picture this moment. You're sitting across from someone you thought you knew. A colleague, a friend, maybe even your partner. They seem genuine, trustworthy, put together. But something feels off. You can't put your finger on it, but your instincts are screaming there's more beneath the surface. Carl Jung discovered that you can see someone's true character by paying attention to just two things. Not their words, not their achievements, not even their actions when people are watching. Jung found that two specific psychological patterns expose who someone really is beneath their mask, and most people give away these secrets without realizing it. Have you ever had that unsettling feeling when someone's carefully constructed image suddenly doesn't match what you're sensing? That moment when the person you thought you knew reveals something that makes you question everything. Jung spent decades studying what he called the persona, the mask we all wear to hide our true selves. But he discovered that no matter how carefully someone constructs their image, these two psychological tells always slip through. Once you know what to look for, you'll never be fooled by a false persona again. These aren't complex psychological tests requiring years of training. They're simple observations that reveal the deepest truths about human nature. By the end of this journey, you'll not only read others like an open book, but you'll understand yourself in ways you never thought possible. But here's what makes Jung's discovery so unsettling. These two reveals don't just expose other people's character. They force you to confront your own hidden nature. Jung wrote, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." And these two psychological windows will show you parts of yourself you've been avoiding. Most people judge character through surface behaviors: confidence, kindness, success, charisma. But Jung understood these are all part of what we call the performance layer, the carefully constructed image we present to the world. The real person lives beneath this performance. Jung discovered that no matter how skilled someone becomes at managing their image, two specific psychological patterns always reveal their authentic nature. These patterns operate outside conscious control, which is why they're so reliable. Jung wrote, "Thinking is difficult. That's why most people judge. But judgment based on surface appearances is almost always wrong. True character assessment requires looking deeper into unconscious patterns that people can't fake or manipulate. Character reveals itself not in what people choose to show you, but in what they can't help but reveal. These two psychological signatures emerge whenever someone's guard is down, their mask slips, or they're under pressure. Jung's first character reveal is shadow mapping, discovering someone's true nature by observing who they judge most harshly. Jung wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." This unconscious direction shows up most clearly in our judgments of others. When someone criticizes another person with unusual intensity, they're not just making an observation. They're projecting their own disowned traits onto that person. Jung discovered that what we hate most in others is often what we've buried deepest in ourselves. He called this projection the unconscious process of seeing our own rejected qualities in other people. The stronger the emotional reaction, the closer you're getting to their shadow. Let me show you how this works. Meet David, a successful architect who prides himself on his integrity. At every office meeting, David complains about his colleague Marcus, calling him fake and manipulative. David's voice gets sharp when he talks about Marcus's charm with clients. His jaw tightens when Marcus gets praise. But here's what Jung would see. David's intense reaction to Marcus isn't about Marcus at all. It's about a part of David that he's rejected. Deep down, David wishes he could be more charming, more socially skilled. But he's buried this desire because he believes it would make him fake. Jung wrote, "We cannot change anything until we accept it. Condemnation does not liberate. It oppresses." David's condemnation of Marcus is actually self-oppression. He's rejecting a part of himself that could serve him well. This is why shadow mapping works so reliably. When someone judges others harshly, they're always telling you something about their own internal conflicts. The traits they criticize most are often the ones they've pushed into their unconscious. Have you ever caught yourself judging someone and realized it revealed something about you? That uncomfortable recognition when you realize your criticism says more about your struggles than about the person you're judging. Shadow projection isn't always negative. Jung discovered we also project positive qualities we're afraid to claim. When someone consistently puts others on pedestals, calling them so talented or so confident, they're often projecting abilities they possess but don't acknowledge in themselves. The key is watching for emotional intensity. When someone's reaction to another person is disproportionate, whether negative or positive, you're seeing their shadow in action. This reveals not just what they've rejected in themselves, but what they secretly long to express. Think about people who trigger your strongest reactions. What qualities create such intensity? What might this reveal about parts of yourself you've either rejected or haven't claimed? Jung understood our shadows contain not just rejected darkness, but unlived potential. The person who judges others as show-offs might be rejecting their own desire for recognition. The person who criticizes others as too emotional might be suppressing their need for deeper feeling. Shadow mapping reveals something profound about human nature. We don't judge others objectively. We judge them through the lens of our own psychological struggles. Every harsh criticism, every intense reaction, every moment of putting someone on a pedestal or tearing them down. These are windows into the critic's inner world. Jung's second character reveal is persona breakdown. Observing how someone behaves when their carefully constructed image is threatened. Jung wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But most people spend enormous energy maintaining who they think they should be. This maintenance requires constant effort. Jung discovered that when someone's persona is challenged, when their mask slips or their image is questioned, their authentic character emerges in that moment of vulnerability. Here's how to spot it. Watch what happens when someone faces unexpected criticism, when their competence is questioned, or when they're caught in a mistake. Do they become defensive, attack back, deflect blame? Or do they pause, reflect, and respond authentically? Let me illustrate with Sarah's story. Sarah is a marketing director known for her calm professionalism. She built her career on being the unflappable one, the person who never loses her cool under pressure. But during a high-stakes client meeting, the client criticized her team's strategy, questioning Sarah's judgment. In that moment, Sarah's persona cracked. Her voice became sharp, her posture rigid. She interrupted the client, deflected blame to her team, and made subtle digs at the client's previous decisions. The calm professional disappeared, revealing someone defensive, insecure, and willing to sacrifice her team to protect her image. Jung would say this moment revealed Sarah's authentic character more than years of professional interaction. Under pressure, when her carefully maintained image was threatened, her true patterns emerged. Jung wrote, "The foundation of all mental illness is the unwillingness to experience legitimate suffering." Sarah's unwillingness to experience the discomfort of criticism forced her into defensive patterns that revealed her character. These persona breakdowns don't just happen during major crises. They occur in small moments throughout everyday interactions. When someone's phone dies and they can't check social media, when they're kept waiting longer than expected, when someone doesn't laugh at their joke. Watch for micro-expressions, tone changes, body language shifts. These tiny moments when the mask slips reveal more about someone's character than hours of casual conversation. Jung understood that authentic character isn't what someone chooses to show you when they're prepared. It's what emerges when they're unprepared, unguarded, or under pressure. Think about your own reactions to unexpected stress or criticism. What patterns emerge when your carefully maintained image is challenged? Do you attack, defend, withdraw, or integrate the feedback? These responses reveal your character beneath your persona. The most integrated people, those Jung called individuated, show consistency between their persona and authentic responses. Their public image and private reactions align because they've done the work of accepting themselves completely. For most people, there's a gap between who they present themselves to be and who they become under pressure. This gap is where their true character lives. Now that you understand Jung's two character reveals, let's explore why they work so reliably. Jung spent his career studying the architecture of the psyche, how the mind organizes itself to navigate reality while protecting the ego. Jung wrote, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. But before transformation can occur, we must understand the chemical composition of each personality, their authentic character beneath the social performance. Shadow projection reveals character accurately because our unconscious mind can't distinguish between self and other when it comes to rejected material. When David criticizes Marcus for being fake, his unconscious is processing his own relationship with authenticity versus social performance. Jung discovered the unconscious operates through projection mapping. It casts internal conflicts onto external people to make them visible and workable. The intensity of someone's judgment always corresponds to the intensity of their internal struggle with that trait. This is why people genuinely secure in an area rarely judge others harshly for weaknesses in that same area. Someone truly confident doesn't waste energy criticizing others' insecurities. Someone authentically successful doesn't feel threatened by others' ambitions. Jung wrote, "Loneliness does not come from having no people about one, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to oneself." When someone consistently judges others, they're revealing their inner loneliness, their disconnection from rejected parts of themselves. Persona breakdown works because maintaining a false image requires enormous psychological energy. Jung called this ego maintenance, and he understood this system becomes fragile under stress. When someone's persona is threatened, their primitive defense mechanisms activate. These defenses reveal their core psychological patterns. Do they attack, indicating underlying aggression? Withdraw, showing avoidance patterns? Deflect, revealing dishonesty tendencies? Or integrate, demonstrating psychological maturity? Jung wrote, "A man who has not passed through the inferno of his passions has never overcome them." The way someone handles criticism or challenge shows whether they've integrated their difficult emotions or are still controlled by them. These patterns are reliable because they operate below conscious awareness. Someone can control their words, manage facial expressions, and carefully craft responses when prepared. But when psychological defenses are activated, authentic patterns emerge. Jung understood that character assessment isn't about catching people in lies or exposing flaws. It's about seeing the whole person, their struggles, defenses, growth areas, and authentic strengths. This understanding allows genuine connection rather than surface-level interaction. Beyond Jung's two primary reveals, there's a third pattern, the integration test. This involves observing how someone handles their own shadow material when it's reflected back to them. This is the ultimate character assessment because it shows whether someone is capable of growth or trapped in unconscious patterns. Jung wrote, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." Here's how the integration test works. When you notice someone projecting their shadow onto others, gently reflect it back, not accusingly, but with curiosity. "I noticed you seem bothered by people who show off. Have you ever felt like you wanted to show off but held yourself back?" Watch what happens. This moment reveals more about their character than months of observation because it tests their relationship with their own unconscious material. Let me show you this through two different responses. Remember David, who judges Marcus for being fake. When asked if he ever wishes he could be more socially skilled, David might respond in one of two ways. Response 1. The defensive pattern. Are you saying I'm fake like Marcus? That's ridiculous. I'm authentic unlike him. I don't need to manipulate people to get ahead. This shows David is deeply defended against his shadow. His character is rigid, his growth potential limited by his inability to acknowledge his own complexity. Response 2. The integrative pattern. Actually, yeah, sometimes I do wish I was better with people. I admire Marcus's social skills, even though his approach bothers me. Maybe I'm jealous of something I wish I had. This shows David can hold paradox, being bothered by something while recognizing his own relationship to it. Jung wrote, "The most intense conflicts, if overcome, leave behind a sense of security and calm that is not easily disturbed." True. People who can integrate feedback about their shadow show this quality. They become stronger through self-awareness rather than weaker. The integration test reveals 3 distinct character types. Jung identified. The unconscious type remains completely unaware of their projections and becomes defensive when confronted. They lack self-reflection and are often surprised by others' reactions. The aware but defended type recognizes their projections intellectually, but can't integrate them emotionally. They might say, "I know I judge people," but can't explore why or what it reveals. The integrated type can observe their projections with curiosity, learn from them, and use them as information about their growth areas. Jung called these individuals conscious, not perfect, but awake to their psychological patterns. This integration capacity predicts how someone will handle conflict, growth, criticism, and intimacy in relationships. People who can't integrate their shadow material will repeat the same patterns indefinitely, blaming external circumstances for internal struggles. But those who can work with their projections consciously become what Jung called individuated, authentic, self-aware, and capable of genuine connection with others. Now let's explore how to apply Jung's framework in real-world situations. But first, a crucial warning. Jung wrote, "Where love reigns, there is no will to power. And where the will to power is paramount, love is lacking." Use these insights to understand and connect, not to manipulate or control. Character assessment should serve compassion, not domination. Here's how to apply shadow mapping in different contexts. In romantic relationships, listen to how your partner talks about their exes, co-workers, or people they dislike. Are they consistently bothered by selfish people? This might reveal their struggle with healthy self-advocacy. Do they criticize needy people? They might be denying their own need for connection. Use this information to understand and support them, not attack them. If you notice your partner projecting, you might say, "It sounds like that person's neediness really bothers you. Do you ever feel like you can't express your own needs?" This creates space for deeper intimacy. In professional settings, observe how colleagues handle feedback, criticism, or challenges to their ideas. Do they become defensive, deflect blame, or attack the messenger? Or do they pause, consider, and respond thoughtfully? This reveals their capacity for growth, collaboration, and leadership under pressure. Jung wrote, "The shoe that fits one person pinches another." There is no recipe for living that suits all cases. Understanding someone's character patterns helps you communicate in ways that fit their psychological structure. For parenting, these insights are invaluable. When your teenager complains that their friends are fake or attention-seeking, help them explore what this reveals about their own struggles with authenticity and social belonging. This builds self-awareness instead of judgment. But remember, character assessment is a two-way mirror. Jung wrote, "Everyone you meet knows something you don't know but need to know. Learn from them." Every judgment you make, every reaction you have to someone else's behavior reveals something about your own psychological patterns. Here's a practical exercise for the next week. Keep a shadow journal. When someone irritates you, write down exactly what bothers you about them. Then ask yourself, where might this trait exist in me? What am I afraid of about this quality? Don't judge yourself for what you find. Jung wrote, "The acceptance of oneself is the essence of the whole moral problem and the epitome of a whole outlook on life." Self-acceptance isn't self-indulgence. It's the foundation of psychological health. Also practice the integration test on yourself. When someone gives you feedback that triggers defensiveness, pause before responding. Ask yourself, what if there's truth in this? What might I learn about myself? Jung understood that character development isn't about becoming perfect. It's about becoming conscious. The goal isn't to eliminate your shadow, but to work with it consciously rather than being controlled by it unconsciously. The most profound aspect of Jung's character assessment framework is the mirror effect. The inevitable moment when you realize that everyone you're analyzing is reflecting aspects of your own psyche back to you. Jung wrote, "Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams? Who looks inside awakes." The ultimate purpose of reading others' character is to awaken to your own. This mirror effect operates on multiple levels. First, the people who trigger your strongest reactions are always showing you your own shadow material. If you're consistently bothered by arrogant people, examine your relationship with confidence and humility. If needy people drain, you explore your own needs and how you express them. Second, the character traits you most admire in others often represent your own undeveloped potential. Jung called this positive projection, casting your own unlived possibilities onto others. When you put someone on a pedestal for being so creative or so confident, you might be projecting qualities you possess but haven't claimed. Third, the patterns you recognize in others become visible in yourself once you know what to look for. If you become skilled at spotting others' persona breakdowns, you'll start noticing your own. If you can see others' shadow projections, you'll begin catching your own in real time. This mirror effect creates a feedback loop of self-awareness. Every person becomes a teacher. Every interaction becomes a classroom. Every judgment becomes a door to self-discovery. Let me share how this played out in my own understanding. I once worked with someone whose constant need for validation irritated me intensely. I judged them as insecure and attention-seeking. But Jung's framework forced me to examine why their behavior triggered me so strongly. The uncomfortable truth was that I had my own relationship with validation that I wasn't acknowledging. I had developed subtle ways of seeking approval that I convinced myself were different from their obvious methods. My judgment was actually self-rejection. I was criticizing in them what I couldn't accept in myself. Jung wrote, "We are not what happened to us. We are what we wish to become." The mirror effect shows us not just what we've been, but what we're capable of becoming. Every character trait you can recognize in others exists as potential within yourself. This doesn't mean everyone will develop every trait. Jung believed in individual differences and unique psychological types. But it means that understanding others' psychological patterns gives you a map of human possibility, including your own unexplored territories. Jung wrote, "Individuation is the opposite of being a member of a group, an institution, a race, or a nation. The conscious individual thinks independently, feels authentically, and relates genuinely rather than conforming to collective patterns. This consciousness has several distinguishing characteristics. You see people's shadow projections with compassion rather than superiority. You understand that their judgments reveal their struggles, not their moral failures. This allows you to respond to the pain beneath their projections rather than react to the projections themselves. You notice persona breakdowns without taking them personally. When someone becomes defensive or attacks under pressure, You recognize their protective mechanisms rather than their authentic intentions. This prevents you from being drawn into unconscious drama. You can hold paradox. Jung wrote, "The pendulum of the mind oscillates between sense and nonsense, not between right and wrong." You understand that people can be both kind and cruel strong, and vulnerable, authentic, and defended, often simultaneously. You use character insights to build connection rather than create distance. When you see someone's psychological patterns clearly, you feel more empathy for their human struggles, not less. Most importantly, you apply the same compassionate analysis to yourself. Jung wrote, "The first half of life is devoted to forming a healthy ego. The second half is going inward and letting go of it." You see your own shadow projections and persona defenses as information, not indictments. This consciousness transforms how you move through the world. Conflicts become opportunities for understanding. Difficult people become teachers. Your own reactions become data about your internal landscape. But Jung warned that consciousness comes with a price. When you see psychological patterns clearly, you may feel isolated from those still operating unconsciously. This loneliness is not permanent, but it is part of the individuation process. You're transitioning from unconscious belonging to conscious connection. The old ways of relating through shared judgments, collective personas, or mutual projections no longer satisfy you. But deeper connections become possible. When you can see and accept both your own and others' psychological complexity, you can form relationships based on authentic understanding rather than idealized projections. Before we go deeper, we must address the shadow side of character assessment itself. Jung wrote, "The healthy man does not torture others. Generally, it is the tortured who turn into torturers." The ability to read character can become its own form of psychological torture if misused. I've seen people use Jung's insights to become shadow hunters. Individuals who use psychological knowledge to attack others' vulnerabilities rather than understand them. This represents a complete perversion of Jung's work. Jung warned about this danger. People will do anything, no matter how absurd, in order to avoid facing their own soul. Sometimes people become obsessed with analyzing others precisely to avoid looking at themselves. Here are the warning signs that you're misusing character assessment. You feel superior when you figure someone out. This superiority complex indicates you're using psychological insight to inflate your ego rather than build understanding. You use your observations to manipulate others. If you're leveraging someone's shadow patterns or persona weaknesses to control them, you've become what Jung would call psychologically poisonous. You become judgmental rather than curious. True character assessment should increase your compassion, not your criticism. If you find yourself becoming more judgmental, you're projecting your own shadow. You avoid examining your own patterns. If you're constantly analyzing others, but never turning the same scrutiny inward, you're using psychology as a defense against self-awareness. The antidote to these dangers is what Jung called ethical relationship to the unconscious. This means using psychological insight to serve love, understanding, and growth, not power control or superiority. Remember that everyone you meet is fighting battles you know nothing about. Jung wrote, "In order to know the light, we must first experience the darkness." Their shadow projections and persona defenses often represent their attempts to cope with pain, trauma, or fear. True character assessment should make you more humble, not more arrogant. When you see someone's psychological patterns clearly, you're seeing their humanity, their struggles, their defenses, their attempts to navigate a complex world with limited tools. Jung understood that we're all wounded healers, all carrying shadow material, all wearing personas to protect our vulnerable core. The goal isn't to expose others' masks. but to create safety for authentic connection. Use these insights to build bridges, not walls. Let character understanding lead to compassion, not condemnation. The ultimate goal of understanding Jung's character assessment framework isn't to become a master analyzer of human nature. It's to become more fully human yourself. Jung wrote, "Man's task is to become conscious of the contents that press upward from the unconscious." As you practice observing shadow projections and persona breakdowns in others, you inevitably become aware of these same patterns in yourself. This awareness creates choice. You can respond consciously rather than react unconsciously. Integration happens gradually through small moments of catching yourself projecting, noticing your persona defenses, and choosing authentic response over automatic reaction. Jung wrote, "We don't really heal anything. We simply let it go." Letting go of unconscious patterns allows your authentic character to emerge. This process isn't comfortable, Jung warned. There is no coming to consciousness without pain. Seeing your own psychological patterns clearly means confronting aspects of yourself you've avoided. But this discomfort is productive pain. It leads to growth rather than stagnation. The integration process follows predictable stages. First, you become aware of patterns in others while remaining blind to your own. You can spot everyone else's projections, but not your own. Second, you begin recognizing your own patterns intellectually, but still get caught in them emotionally. You might think, "I'm projecting right now," while still feeling completely justified in your judgment. Third, you develop the ability to catch yourself in real time and choose different responses. This creates space between trigger and reaction, allowing for conscious choice. Fourth, you begin responding to others' unconscious patterns with consciousness, rather than unconsciousness. Instead of getting defensive when someone projects onto you, you can see their struggle and respond with appropriate boundaries and compassion. Finally, you embody what Jung called the transcendent function. The ability to hold opposing psychological forces in creative tension until something new emerges. You become comfortable with paradox, uncertainty, and complexity. Jung wrote, "The difference between a good life and a bad life is how well you walk through the fire." The fire is the inevitable conflicts, projections, and persona breakdowns that characterize human relationships. Learning to walk through these experiences consciously transforms them from destructive forces into opportunities for growth. This transformation doesn't happen overnight, and it's never complete. Consciousness is a practice, not a destination. But each moment of awareness, each choice to respond rather than react, each decision to see clearly rather than judge harshly, moves you closer to authentic selfhood. As you embody Jung's insights about character and consciousness, something remarkable happens. Your awareness creates ripples that affect everyone around you. Jung wrote, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." When you stop participating in unconscious patterns, when you don't take the bait of others' projections or react defensively to persona breakdowns, you create space for new kinds of interaction. People sense this shift, even if they can't articulate it. They might say you seem different, calmer, or more real. What they're sensing is your decreased reactivity to their unconscious material. You're no longer feeding their projections or reinforcing their defenses. This creates consciousness contagion. Your awareness invites others into greater awareness, not through preaching or teaching, but through embodiment. Jung wrote, "You are what you do not, what you say you'll do." Your authentic presence speaks louder than any words. Some people will resist this shift. Your refusal to participate in unconscious drama might initially frustrate those who depend on these patterns. They might escalate their projections or intensify their persona defenses, trying to pull you back into familiar dynamics. But others will be drawn to your consciousness like flowers toward light. They'll sense the possibility of more authentic connection and begin loosening their own defensive patterns. This ripple effect extends beyond individual relationships into families, workplaces, and communities. When one person stops projecting their shadow and starts owning their authentic reactions, it gives others permission to do the same. Jung believed that individual consciousness was the key to collective transformation. He wrote, "The world will ask you who you are, and if you don't know, the world will tell you." When you know who you are, including your shadow and your authentic character beneath your persona, you become immune to the world's projections. You also become a beacon for others seeking their own authenticity. Your willingness to face your shadow gives others courage to face theirs. Your ability to drop your persona masks creates safety for others to risk authenticity. This is the deeper purpose of character assessment. Not to judge or manipulate others, but to understand human psychological patterns so clearly that you can respond to them consciously rather than react unconsciously. Jung's legacy wasn't his specific techniques or theories. It was his invitation to consciousness. Every person who chooses awareness over unconsciousness, authenticity over performance, and understanding over judgment contributes to the evolution of human consciousness itself. The two things Carl Jung identified that reveal someone's true character, their shadow projections and their persona breakdowns, aren't just tools for reading others. They're mirrors that reflect your own journey toward consciousness and authenticity. Jung wrote, "To be normal is the ultimate aim of the unsuccessful." But you're not here to be normal. You're here to be conscious, to see clearly, to understand deeply, and to connect authentically with the human beings around you. Every time you catch yourself judging someone harshly, you have an opportunity to explore your own shadow. Every time you notice someone's mask slipping under pressure, you can examine your own persona defenses. Every time you resist the urge to use psychological insight as a weapon, you choose consciousness over unconsciousness. Jung understood that the journey toward authentic selfhood is the most important work any individual can do, not just for themselves, but for the collective evolution of human consciousness. Your willingness to face your own shadow, to drop your own masks, to respond consciously, rather than react unconsciously, creates ripples that extend far beyond your individual life. You become what Jung called a culture creator, someone who models new possibilities for human relationship and consciousness. The two reveals Jung discovered aren't the end of character assessment. They're the beginning of character development. Your own character development and your contribution to the consciousness of everyone you encounter. So watch for the projections, notice the persona breakdowns, but most importantly, turn that same clear seeing toward yourself. Because the ultimate character you're developing isn't someone else's. It's your own. The person who learns to see their judgments as information about themselves, who catches their own projections in real time, who responds to criticism with curiosity rather than defensiveness. This person becomes a force for consciousness in a world that desperately needs more awareness. Jung wrote, "Your vision becomes clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams? Who looks inside awakes." The journey toward authentic selfhood begins with the courage to look inside, to face your shadow, to examine your persona, and to embrace the full complexity of who you are. This is Jung's ultimate invitation, not just to see others clearly, but to become who you truly are. And in becoming authentic yourself, you give others permission to do the same. The two reveals are your beginning. Where they lead you is up to the consciousness you choose to cultivate. Your character is not just what you discover about others. It's what you choose to become yourself. What strong judgments have you made recently that might reveal your own shadow material? How do you typically respond when your carefully maintained image is challenged? Are you ready to see your reactions as information about your own psychological patterns? What would change in your relationships if you approached others with conscious understanding rather than unconscious judgment? Your journey toward consciousness begins with honest self-reflection. Every projection you recognize, every persona, breakdown you witness with compassion rather than judgment, every moment you choose understanding over criticism, you're contributing to the evolution of human consciousness itself. Now that you understand the fundamentals, let's explore more sophisticated applications of Jung's insights. Advanced shadow work involves recognizing not just individual projections, but collective shadow patterns that entire groups or cultures project onto others. Jung wrote, "The individual has always been crushed by the leviathan of collective opinion." Understanding how collective shadows operate allows you to see beyond personal psychology into broader patterns of human behavior. Consider how entire nations project their shadow qualities onto other nations, how certain professions become repositories for collective shadow material, how political movements often define themselves not by what they stand for, but by what they oppose. Their shadow projections made manifest in the political arena. The person who becomes conscious of these collective patterns gains immunity from mass psychology. They can observe societal projections without being swept up in them. This level of consciousness allows you to remain centered while chaos swirls around you. Jung observed that during times of crisis, collective shadows emerge with frightening intensity. Entire populations can become possessed by archetypal forces they don't understand. The conscious individual serves as an anchor point of sanity during these collective storms. But this consciousness comes with responsibility. Jung wrote, "A man who has not passed through the inferno of his passions has never overcome them." The person who has integrated their own shadow material becomes capable of holding space for others who are still struggling with unconscious forces. One of Jung's most profound discoveries was what he called the transcendent function, the psychological mechanism that bridges opposites and creates new possibilities. This function becomes active when you can hold paradoxical aspects of human nature in creative tension. In relationships, the transcendent function allows you to love someone while clearly seeing their flaws, to appreciate their gifts while acknowledging their limitations, to hold space for their growth while accepting who they are right now. Most people collapse these paradoxes. They either idealize others, seeing only their positive qualities, or they become disillusioned and see only their negative aspects. The transcendent function allows you to hold both simultaneously, which creates space for authentic relationship. This capacity transforms how you engage with difficult people. Instead of getting caught in their drama or trying to fix them, you can hold steady awareness of both their struggles and their potential. This holding creates a field of consciousness that invites their own growth without demanding it. Jung wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is being who you are." The transcendent function allows you to extend this privilege to others, seeing who they truly are beneath their defenses, while also recognizing who they might become through conscious development. Jung discovered that beneath individual psychology lie universal patterns he called archetypes. These are fundamental human experiences that shape our perceptions and behaviors across all cultures and time periods. Understanding archetypal patterns adds another dimension to character assessment. When someone consistently plays the role of the victim, they're embodying the archetypal pattern of the wounded child. When someone always tries to rescue others, they're channeling the archetypal savior. These patterns aren't inherently good or bad. They're aspects of the human experience. But when someone becomes identified with a single archetypal pattern, they lose psychological flexibility. The victim becomes unable to recognize their own power. The savior becomes unable to receive help from others. Recognizing archetypal patterns in others allows you to respond to the deeper human story they're enacting. Instead of getting frustrated with someone's victim mentality, you can see the wounded child seeking healing. Instead of enabling someone's savior complex, you can invite them to explore their own need for rescue. This archetypal awareness also reveals your own unconscious patterns. What roles do you find yourself playing repeatedly in relationships? What archetypal energies are you drawn to or repelled by in others? These attractions and aversions reveal your own relationship with these universal human patterns. Jung wrote, "Your vision becomes clear when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes." Archetypal awareness is part of this awakening process, seeing the universal human dramas playing out through your personal experiences. One of the most sophisticated aspects of character assessment involves recognizing different types of psychological defense mechanisms and understanding how to work with them skillfully. Jung identified several primary defense patterns. Projection, which we've discussed extensively, involves seeing your own unconscious material in others. Repression involves pushing uncomfortable thoughts or feelings out of awareness entirely. Displacement involves redirecting emotional energy from its original target to a safer one. There's also intellectualization, where someone retreats into abstract thinking to avoid feeling. Rationalization, where someone creates logical explanations for unconscious motivations. Each defense mechanism developed for good reasons. They protected the person from overwhelm at some point in their development. Understanding this allows you to work with defenses rather than attacking them directly. When someone is projecting, gently reflecting their shadow back to them can create awareness. When someone is intellectualizing, inviting them into body awareness or emotional expression can restore balance. When someone is rationalizing, asking curious questions about their underlying feelings can bypass their mental defenses. The key is timing and relationship. Defenses soften when people feel safe. Creating psychological safety through acceptance, curiosity, and non-judgment allows people to relax their protective mechanisms naturally. Jung wrote, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." This applies to defensive patterns as well. The defenses that most annoy you in others are likely related to your own defensive strategies. The ultimate application of Jung's character assessment principles is in creating conscious relationships. Connections based on seeing and accepting each other's full humanity rather than idealized projections. Conscious relationships begin with conscious individuals. Two people who understand their own shadows, recognize their projections, and can respond rather than react create a container for extraordinary intimacy and growth. In conscious relationships, conflicts become opportunities for deeper understanding rather than battles to be won. When your partner triggers you, instead of attacking or defending you, can pause and ask, "What is this reaction teaching me about myself? What old wound or pattern is being activated?" This doesn't mean becoming passive or failing to address legitimate concerns. It means taking responsibility for your own psychological material while also maintaining appropriate boundaries with others. The goal isn't to eliminate all conflict or misunderstanding. That would be impossible and ultimately boring. The goal is to use the inevitable friction of human relationship as fuel for mutual consciousness and growth. Jung wrote, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." Conscious relationships maximize this transformational potential while minimizing unnecessary suffering. Understanding Jung's character assessment framework intellectually is only the beginning. The real work lies in integrating these insights into your daily experience and embodying them in your relationships and life choices. Integration happens through practice. Each time you catch yourself projecting and choose curiosity over judgment, you strengthen your capacity for consciousness. Each time you notice your persona slipping and respond authentically instead of defensively, you deepen your relationship with your true self. Integration also requires what Jung called active imagination, the ability to dialogue with different aspects of your psyche. When you notice a strong judgment arising, you can ask that part of yourself, what are you trying to protect? What do you need me to understand? This internal dialogue helps transform unconscious patterns into conscious choices. The critical voice that judges others harshly might actually be trying to maintain your standards and values. It just needs to learn more skillful ways of expressing itself. Embodiment means living from your integrated understanding rather than just thinking about it. It means making life choices that honor your authentic nature rather than conforming to external expectations. It means relating to others from wholeness rather than neediness or defensiveness. The person who has integrated Jung's insights becomes a living invitation for others to embrace their own authenticity. They create space for truth-telling vulnerability and growth simply through their presence. This embodiment isn't a final achievement. It's an ongoing practice. There will always be new layers of shadow to integrate new aspects of your persona, to recognize and soften new opportunities, to choose consciousness over unconsciousness. Jung wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is being who you are." Character assessment ultimately serves this purpose. Not just understanding others, but discovering and becoming your most authentic self.